Hello and welcome to my channel. I am going to show you my small but good soundtrack vinyl collection. So here goes, in no particular order. I'm just going to show them off and let's start. Tron Legacy, the Daft Punk soundtrack to the movie, of course, Tron Legacy. Beautiful movie, fantastic soundtrack, and I'm so glad they reissued this one, because it was, when it came, it completely sold out, the vinyl, so they're quite expensive on eBay, but they reissued it a couple of years ago, and I found one in New York City. So I was very, very happy to get this baby. Yeah, for all of you who know the album, not much to say other than it's a fantastic soundtrack. One of my absolute favorite movies of all time, Mad Max Fury Road. The soundtrack here, it's a double disc. And this is one of those soundtracks where every single track is brilliant. Moving on to Blade Runner. Of course, this soundtrack was never released back in the day. So it has been released on CD in the 90s, I think, and the vinyl, I think there were a couple of bootlegs way back in the day. But it has never been officially released until now, of course, on CD and vinyl. And this one is a red vinyl, I believe. Yeah, it's supposed to be... Yeah, it's the red vinyl there, you can see. And it's also one of my absolute favorite scores. Moving on to Blade Runner Part 2, or Blade Runner 2049. Also a fantastic record. Not much to say there other than if you have the original, you gotta have the sequel. Hans Zimmer, what a legend, what a legend. Next, Old Boy, the Korean movie, not the American remake. Thank you very much. It's the Park Chan-wook original movie from 2004, I believe. Fantastic movie, of course, and equally fantastic soundtrack. And we have Hellraiser, the classic movie from '87, Clive Barker's film, which of course has many sequels, but this one is the legendary, the original. It's a beautiful soundtrack. I don't listen to it that much, but I'm glad I have it in my collection. Moving on to John Carpenter's The Fog. I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter. I think he makes brilliant movies and also brilliant electronic soundtracks, and he makes them himself mostly. He composes the soundtracks, directs the film. He's quite the man. And this one is a double LP, and it's green vinyl, and I love this album, but I really did not need a double LP because many of these tracks sound exactly the same. Another John Carpenter classic, and this one is electronic, it's beautiful, it takes my mind out of everything, and it takes me back to a time where things were much simpler. This is the Swedish press, I believe. There are many different covers to this one, but yeah, this is the one I got. And another John Carpenter classic from the 80s, of course, also science fiction and also electronic, Starman with Jeff Bridges. It's a beautiful film. This baby is, when I found it in a store, I almost screamed. I screeched. I've been hunting this down for ages. Years and years. Finally, I found it. It's a Brazilian edition of Near Dark from Tangerine Dream. I mean, when you talk about soundtracks, Tangerine Dream are the gods of electronic science fiction, horror genre soundtracks, especially during the 80s. Every single track in this record is absolutely a masterpiece. Of course, it's Tangerine Dream, you know. You can't expect less from them. Next, another Tangerine Dream classic, Sorcerer. This was my first Tangerine Dream soundtrack record I bought. And when I listened to it, I knew I had to start collecting Tangerine Dream. Because I love the 80s and because I love electronic pulsing, pumping scores. And this is no exception. It's brilliant, it's fantastic, every single track. And it's a beautiful artwork. I love that. Love, love, love. Next, another Tangerine Dream masterpiece, Miracle Mile. I have seen the movie, liked it. But the soundtrack it's much better than the movie, I must say, in this case. This soundtrack is one of my favorites. It's also one of those where every single track is equally good. You can listen to the album from start to finish and just enjoy every second. Miracle Mile. It's been reissued now, but this is an old one from 1989, I think. Next, yet another Tangerine Dream. Risky Business, the Tom Cruise movie. This is a Spanish press. And this record has Tangerine Dream, Prince. Love on a Real Train by Tangerine Dream has got to be the quintessential electronic soundtrack score. Risky Business, beautiful soundtrack. Next, Razorback, an 80s horror film about a boar, gigantic boar. It's a beautiful movie. It's not that good, but it's beautiful. It's photographed beautifully, and it's got, of course, a beautiful soundtrack, which that's why I have this record, because their soundtrack is good. And also the cover is beautiful. I mean, come on. I miss this sort of 80s fantasy cover arts, you know, painted by real artists. Moving on, 2001, Space Odyssey. No introduction here. It's the Stanley Kubrick masterpiece. And this movie, I mean, the soundtrack mainly contains classical music. But it's still a great addition to my mostly electronic scores. And also, of course, I love the cover art. Who doesn't, yeah? And next, another old classic for a few dollars more / a fistful of dollars. It's a collection of both films with tracks from both films. And I love the artwork. And I love each track of this record. It's a beautiful, beautiful Ennio Morricone soundtrack. So I'm really glad I have this baby. Next, Ghost Story. It's a horror movie with sort of a jazzy, sort of loungy score. It's beautiful. It's a really nice listening. Next, another hero of mine, Giorgio Moroder. He made tons of records in the 80s. This one is Midnight Express. Beautiful soundtrack. Next, another Giorgio Moroder, of course. A hero of mine, Cat People. Equally beautiful soundtrack where every track needs to be heard. Every track on this record is also good. It's one of those you can listen to from start to finish and enjoy every second of it. And next one is another 80s classic, which I really didn't think existed. I have never seen it. I've been looking for it for ages. And of course, all the songs in here are good. It's a great pop record. So I was quite shocked and really excited to find this baby. To me, this is a true gem. Next, Flash Gordon by Queen. I used to have this record when I was a kid. Of course, Freddie was Freddie, fantastic singer, fantastic performer, but Queen's music is not my cup of tea. But this soundtrack, of course, because it's very electronic and very 80s, of course I have to like it, I have to dig it. I love the movie. So yeah, Flash Gordon by Queen. It has a poster inside, a Ming the Merciless poster, I do believe. Yeah, there it is. Isn't that beautiful? Yes, we have to move on. We have to move on. Next, Ghostbusters, 80s classic, nothing much to say. And this was the time when many soundtracks came, which really they were soundtracks, but they were not scores. I was obsessed with this movie when I was a kid. I saw it, I think, 3 times in the cinema, and it got me every time. And the reason was the music. I absolutely love the score for this film. There's one track called, what is it called? Waxing Elizabeth. Google it on YouTube. This is also one of those babies I've been hunting down for years. Until I finally found it on a record store, secondhand for $1. Thank you. And now another classic from the 90s, Twin Peaks. It is a TV show, or yeah, I think everyone knows Twin Peaks by now, yeah. Not much to say other than it being, of course, a fantastic record. Another one of those you can listen to every track without skipping and just be in awe. By Angelo Badalamenti. Masterpiece. Next, Björk and her film Dancer in the Dark. It's a great soundtrack, and it's to me this is more of a Björk record than a soundtrack, but it's from the movie, so it's classified as her soundtrack. And the tracks here, I've Seen It All and New World are so amazing. I mean, next, Air and the Virgin Suicides. 90s electronic music at its best. I love Air. I have, I think, all the records on vinyl. And this is the soundtrack for the Sofia Coppola movie, and it is beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of work. It's a great addition to my collection. Disney's Fantasia. It's a 3-record, 3 LP collection from the movie, the animation Fantasia, from 1946, I think. It's always been one of my favorite Disney movies. No, it is my favorite Disney movie of all time, and it contains mainly or only classical music. And if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. And it's this edition is so beautiful. It's a 3-record with a booklet inside with beautiful pictures, and the records are heavy. It's like 100 or 200 grams each. So it's a heavy, thick record. And I have never seen it, but when I saw it in a flea market, I had to get it. Worth every cent. And now down to the last, I think, 4. And these movies are not particularly my favorite films. They're just movies I've seen and which, for some reason, I bought the soundtracks. And the reason here being that I love the artwork. I think it's a beautiful picture. The movie is good. The soundtrack is okay. It's fun. It's not electronic. It's not pumping, pulsating 80s beauty, but it is what it is. It's a nice addition also. Next, Stanley Kubrick, Clockwork Orange. I am not particularly fond of this soundtrack. It's weird. The movie is classic, yada yada yada, but the soundtrack, it's The Godfather Part 2. This record is beautiful. Some of the tracks are really, really beautiful, but others are quite hard to listen to. And last, Towering Inferno, also one of those records that I had to have in my collection. And I'm not particularly fond of the music, but I mean, it is John Williams. And, to be honest, I am not a fan of John Williams. I prefer Pino Donaggio, I prefer Morricone, I prefer Giorgio Moroder, Hans Zimmer, Tangerine Dream. There are so many others that I prefer other than John Williams. I think he is a bit overrated. That was it. So I just want to thank you for staying with me this long, and I'll see you next time with another video. Ciao!